first murder connected to the Zodiac Killer was the shooting of students Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday on the 20th of December of 1968 on the road leading to Lake Herman within the borders of Benicia.
The Zodiac Killer is one of the most notorious serial killers in American history and is believed to have murdered at least 5 people in Northern California in the late 1960s and early 1970s, causing fear and anxiety in the state to when and who the next victims would be. The Zodiac has become a source of fascination for true crime enthusiasts and amateur sleuths who still try to crack the case. Although he was never caught, the Zodiac Killer's story has been immortalized in many books, films, and television shows. Stay tuned for our take on the most likely suspects and why. The Zodiac mystery starts 5 days before Christmas in 1968. December 20th, 1968. David Faraday, 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16, were murdered with a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol in a gravel parking area near Lake Herman Road in Vallejo. July 4th, 1969. Darlene Ferrin, 22, and Mike Magoo, 19, were shot multiple times with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol on July 4th, 1969, while parked in Vallejo's Blue Rock Springs Park. Ferrin is killed, but Magoo survives to describe their attacker.
The two actually had a plan to go for a birthday party at Hogan High School, 3 blocks from Betty's house, but instead they visit a friend before stopping at a local restaurant and using Herman Road. David parked his car in a quiet place at 10 p.m. and shortly after 11 o'clock, a woman who lives nearby found their bodies, and the police captain of Solano County investigated the crime, but no progress has been made to the case.
The same evening, an individual contacted the Vallejo Police Department to identify the murder weapon and take responsibility for the homicide and the Faraday-Jensen homicides on Lake Herman Road. July 31st, 1969. The San Francisco Examiner, Chronicle, and Vallejo Times-Herald receive correspondence from an individual professing to be the killer. Each letter contains 1/3 of the cipher of the encoded message. The letters are signed with a symbol of 2 intersecting circles. The logo is also used on watches manufactured by Zodiac. August 4th, 1969. In a letter to the San Francisco Examiner dated August 4th, 1969, the killer first employs the famous greeting, "This is the Zodiac speaking," coining the moniker he would be known as forever. August 8th, 1969. Donald and Betty Harden decipher the cipher codes and produce a statement from the Zodiac describing his enjoyment of murdering people.
And because of the forensic evidence, it was assumed that another car parked next to the people were killed. Apparently, Zodiac was in the second car, but he got out of it and headed towards David's car to then order the victims to get out of their cars. And the forensic doctor sees that Betty got out of the car first. When David was about to get out, he was shot.
And everybody who's not a tree, can we clear out this way?
See, that's a tree, that's a tree, that's a tree. And that's the one he probably was behind. We're a little closer, but remember we talked about the fact that this is all eroded. So that was the closest tree. There was a tree there. That puts me probably about in here, okay? And I'm facing this way, laying on my back. And Cecilia is on her stomach facing this way, actually facing kind of like this. So her head's facing that way. And we're talking. And when she says, "I see a man over there," what I'm thinking is, if you look to the left of her, you can see those trees on that hill. That would be another picnic area. So seeing someone on that hill, would be of interest, but not of any great urgency. But seeing someone as close as her would obviously be some cause for concern. And so I'm continuing to talk, and then she says, he went behind a tree. So he goes behind the tree where she is, and again, I'm thinking behind those trees over there. So then when she says, oh, he's got a gun, he's walking this direction, and I turn around, and from there to here, he's probably made it to about here. So we're about half the distance between the tree and me. And so that was my first running into him, and it was really somewhat of a surprise that he was that close, because again, I was looking at the other area.
And on July 4, 1969, shortly before midnight, Malka Renault and Darlene Ferrin headed to Blue Rock Springs Park near Vallejo. While the two were sitting in Darlene's car, a second car drove up to the place and stopped next to them, but left quickly, only to return 10 minutes later and parking behind them.
As soon as I get up, he goes, okay, hold on everybody, nothing to be afraid of, all I want is your money, and I need your car. If everybody stays cool, nobody's gonna get hurt. And I believed him.
The only thing to me, this came out since then, but he told me at that time that he had killed a guard getting out of a prison. And so I did take him as a killer. To me, a killer isn't a normal person, so I assumed at the time that something was wrong, but as far as a psychopath or any other aberration, I really didn't realize at the moment. I wasn't concerned because I was cooperating with him, and I expected that he would cooperate with me. And I tried to be as accommodating under the circumstances as possible to save the girl, any harm. He wanted our money. And I actually laughed at the moment because I told him, I says, I've only got 75 cents in my pocket. And I says, you're welcome to have it. But if you need help, I'm sure I can give you help otherwise. And I asked him what his problem was. And he mentioned that he was a convict trying to get to Mexico and needed money and transportation. And I offered him assistance. I told him what I was doing in school, and that if I could be of any assistance whatsoever, I offered him my phone number, anything like this, and this just isn't what he wanted. He said he wanted money, and I was really sorry. I said, you got to check if I'd really like to help you, if you would be willing to accept help. He said, well, what I need right now is to get you tied up.
He pulled some cuts of 3-foot lengths of clothesline. It's actually plastic. It's the kind that's hollow in the center. And he handed those to Cecilia and asked her to tie me up.
Of course, she was real nervous and tied me rather loosely. And he came and he tightened the knots up, and then he tied her up. And we continued the dialogue along most of this time.
On the 5th of July of 1969, a man called the Vallejo Police Department and claimed to be responsible for the attack. He also claimed to be responsible for the murders of Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday. The police traced the location of the call made from the telephone booth at a gas station near Darlene's house and a few blocks away from Vallejo Police Department. And on the 27th of September of 1969, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were hiking by a Lake Beresiah when a man approached them with a sword, glasses, and a necklace on his chest, and then pulled out a pistol. The man claimed that there was an escaped convict from Deer Lodge prison, and that he had killed a security guard and stolen a car, explaining to them that he needed their money and their car to go to Mexico. Then he took out plastic ropes and asked Shepard to tie Hartnell up before he tied her up. Then the killer then examined Hartnell to discover that Shepard did not tie him tightly. Then the killer pulled out a knife and stabbed them repeatedly, then walked 500 yards back to Knoxville Road, then put his necklace on the door of Hartlell's car and wrote under it using a pen the time and date of the crime and the method of killing them with a knife was something unusual and really weird.
September 27th, 1969. Cecilia Shepard, 22, and Brian Hartnell, 20, are approached by a man in a Zodiac emblazoned hooded costume on the shoreline of Lake Berryessa in Napa, California. Both are repeatedly stabbed, but Hartnell survives. The symbol and the message, Vallejo 12-20-68, 7-4-69, Sept 27-69, 6:30 by knife, is carved on Hartnell's car door, confirming the previous homicides by the Zodiac.
Police deputies Dave Collins and Ray Land were the first on the scene, and Cecilia Shepard was conscious when Collins came in, as she provided him with details about the kill. Hartnell and Shepard were taken to the hospital after that, and Shepard fell into a coma during their transfer and did not regain consciousness again, and later died 2 days later. But Hartnell survived to tell his story to the newspaper. Detective Ken Narlow, who was assigned to solve the case, worked on it until his retirement in 1987. And on the 8th of November of 1969, the Zodiac Killer sent another postal message containing 340 encrypted characters. Those characters were not decrypted until the decryption of this message was announced on the 11th of December of 2020 from a team consisting of American and Australian and a Belgian. The FBI announced its follow-up on these developments, and this news was confirmed by listing the method of decoding the code and confirming the correctness that was stated in this message.
A couple in Salinas solved the first cryptogram by using what they call a crib. That's where you guess the words and phrases that you think might be in the cipher, and then you go from there.
They believed that the cipher would contain the word kill, so they looked for pairings of certain symbols that could represent 2-letter L's, and they were successful. The message read, "I like killing people because it's so much fun."
Once they verified the corresponding symbols for that phrase, the rest of it they solved pretty quickly.
Zodiac's following ciphers are infinitely more complex, and for 51 years, cryptologists don't even come close to solving the remaining ciphers. Investigators wonder if this is one of Zodiac's tricks.
And on the 27th of October of 1970, Chronicle reporter Paul Avery received a Halloween card signed with letter Z, following by the Zodiac sign of the cross, with the handwritten phrase saying, "Hide, you are doomed." The threat was taken seriously and was published on the front page of Chronicle newspaper. Shortly thereafter, Paul Avery received a letter about Zodiac's activities and similarity between them and the unsolved murder of Sherry Jo Bates, which occurred 4 years earlier at Riverside College in the greater Los Angeles area. This was written about in the Chronicle newspaper on the 16th of November of 1970.
On October the 20th, 1969, at 2 p.m., a man claiming to be the Zodiac Killer actually called the police department, demanding that one of 2 lawyers appear on the KGO TV talk show. He wanted either F. Lee Bailey, who wasn't available, or Melvin Belli, who agreed. And bizarrely, someone claiming to be the Zodiac Killer actually called up the talk show and claimed to be called Sam.
Get a kill.
Talk to us. Just tell us what's going on inside you right now, Sam, please.
I have headaches.
All right. How long have you had those headaches, Sam? Been a long time?
Since I killed a kid.
If it all boils down to the question of you're giving yourself up, if you could be assured that you wouldn't get capital punishment for myself.
I don't want to give myself up.
Huh?
I want to kill those kids.
The Zodiac, after the incident, remained silent for almost 3 years, after which the Chronicle newspaper received a letter from the Zodiac, dated on the 29th of January of 1974, describing the Exorcist film as the best satirical comedy he had ever seen. The letter included a snippet of a song by the band Mikado and the usual symbol at the bottom that has not yet been explained. And the Zodiac sealed the letter with a new result: I, 37, and the police, O.